Hello and welcome to Global Order. My name is Ishan Dhar. Today we're going to be joined by a very special guest, Ms. Francesca Marino, who is a well-known Italian journalist with over 30 years' experience reporting in both India and Pakistan. Today we're discussing her recent book titled Balakot, From Pulawama to Payback, which offers fresh, previously unknown detail about the 2019 India-Pakistan crisis. The book also goes into tremendous detail into the intricacies of Pakistan's jihadist proxy landscape, as well as its perfidy with the rest of the world when it comes to using terrorist proxies. Please stay tuned. This is going to be a fascinating conversation you don't want to miss. Jessica, thank you very much for joining us here at Global Order. It was an absolute pleasure to read your book, and we eagerly look forward to your insights.
Thank you for having me.
So, Francesca, before we actually get into the 2019 India-Pakistan crisis, you describe a very interesting anecdote in your book, and that is a conversation with the late Pervez Musharraf in the immediate aftermath of the American raid in Abbottabad, which Osama bin Laden was taken out. And you actually warned him at the time that should the Indians try something similar, they would be in tremendous trouble. They would be very vulnerable. And why don't you tell us more about that? You almost portrayed what happened 8 years later.
Yeah, I mean, of course, that was my first thought. But Musharraf was a very friendly and entertaining person. So I mean, the conversation was quite friendly. And so that's why I said that. It was, of course, it sounded to everybody quite strange. A commando, an American commando, lands in Abbottabad, takes out Bin Laden, comes back, blow an helicopter because there was some problem, goes back in a military citadel. And meanwhile, everybody is sleeping. If I remember correctly, back then, the then chief of army and chief of ISI said, "Oh, we saw it on TV." Which, frankly. So that was my first thought. I told Musharraf, but I mean, if you think I can believe all this, I said, if it is true, God help you if India decide to do the same. He was quite, India has not the guts to do it. But then he said, look, the Afghan border is a friendly border. We don't have so much on that border because it's not considered dangerous.
Right.
The bulk of our defense is on Indian border. It will never happen. It cannot happen. So when it happened, I started laughing alone at home because it was what I thought it would happen. Now, the bulk of their defense is on the Indian border, so either their defense is useless or, well.
Yeah, you had actually brought up something specific about certain weaknesses with radars that might...
No, that was a joke circulating in Pakistan at about that time.
Oh,
yeah, they said, hey, radar on sale. It cannot detect helicopters, but it catches Star TV. So Yeah, and with well, it still catches Star TV because then it happened again after Pahalgam.
Of course.
And again, I mean, at Balakot time, those planes were totally undetected.
Absolutely. And when the strike did happen in 2019, you actually go into great detail describing the many, I guess, inconsistencies in the Pakistani reaction and narrative. And often a lot of it was self contradictory. So, what
Yeah,
exactly did that tell you about what had happened on the ground?
see, since the beginning, there was a total, well, at the very beginning, there was a lot of confusion,
Right.
contradictory statements. Mm, they basically did not know what to say. Somebody was saying they hit, somebody was saying they did not, somebody was saying, yes, planes crossed the border, have been chased out. Somebody, then with it was not even days, was hours. It started to be, yeah, they did it. They did it, but they did not hit the target. Yes, they hit, they dropped some bomb, but it did not hit the target. The target, there's no target there. That camp, that constructions are actually a madrasa for children, not a terrorist camp. And then, at that point, the narrative consolidated is not a terrorist camp, is a madrasa. They hit some crowds entry, as Amit Gul said. They got some poor villager around there saying, yeah, we got scared, but nothing happened. They even took people to see the craters left by the supposed alleged Indian bombs. The point is, years later, but immediately after, when the Indian army released some detail on it. The point is, those bombs, the bombs used in the strike, don't leave a crate.
Yes, that's right.
A
We get
crater.
into that in detail. You were talking about the spice bombs.
Yes, they would have made a hole. And then, there were no bombs don't disappear. No spare, no leftovers, no parts, nothing. So Air Marshal Danoa theory was they might have blasted something and showed and show that. Then the usual, well, it started back then, a full social media campaign
Correct. And
led by the legendary
DGISPR, Asif
yes,
Ghafoor,
Gafur.
who no one can forget.
Yes, the unforgettable Gafur. We all regret he's not anymore on social. One of the most entertaining fellows ever, who had a great imagination. So he started to a full media campaign consolidating this narrative.
And you at the time, you bring up an eyewitness account
Yeah,
that you were able to access. You call him Asif, and the account that he gave you was also later corroborated, it seems, by other sources. When you put this out there, it seems that you had a very sort of interesting reaction as well, uh, from the media. Of course, there was the sparring with DJI SPR Asif Ghafoor. That is to be expected.
Oh,
To
he
get-
was so nice. In a few hours, he shot a video on me and released it on on social media.
Yet, I believe Reuters reached out to you
Yeah.
wondering how you accessed an eyewitness,
Yes.
and
How it is possible
they couldn't.
you found an eyewitness and I could not. Well, you use stringers. Stringers are Pakistani.
Of course.
They have to live there. Everybody knows they are Reuters or any other agency stringers. Nobody is going to risk his life uh, on for duty.
Right.
Yeah, it was. I could, because, as I say in the book, I knew this person since many years.
Yeah, and you have years of reporting in Pakistan as
Yes,
well, until, of
yes.
course, you were banned from there. But
Reporting on Pakistan, speaking for minorities, for minorities in international forums, and also reporting from the ground. In sense, my way to access this profession is quite peculiar. So I most of the times I would be in the street or in the market chatting to people, and so that was a very old acquaintance which I had lost contact with when after I was detained in Pakistan. I severed the contacts with anybody who could end up in troubles being associated with me. So after so many years, when it happened, I gave voice to practically everybody I knew. See if somebody has seen something, or there are the voices around, and so on. And then I get that call, which was totally unexpected.
right.
This person still had my number, and when he was told this foreign lady, this Italian journalist, was looking for informations, and they gave my name, and he realized that was me. So he said nothing, but he called me. He called me, and I almost fell out of the chair when he told me, no, no, ma'am, I was there. I gave all the details I could. I won't give further details because, I mean, I'm proud of the fact that this person is still alive. So,
Right. You, of course, would not want to put him at risk. So, what precisely did his eyewitness account provide that was a significant departure from this prevailing narrative that the Indian Air Force did not meet its objectives
yeah,
that night?
okay. The point was this. He was there. I told him to stick only to what he saw personally. Of course, an eyewitness is not a drone.
Right.
So you have a limited angle. So I told him, you just tell me what you have seen personally. And in the beginning, he told me, yes, he had seen 35 bodies, he had seen ambulances, everybody's phone had been taken out, and so on. Imagine also in the dark. So it was, he gave names of two people, two former ISI members who had been killed there, were acting as instructors. And that was Then later, I told him. He said, "If you want to go on, I'll find out something else." And we had a number of conversations with which I reported in the book for the first time, more or less as they were. I did not do it earlier for obvious reasons. In that moment, the people that had access to those kinds of informations were not that many. So yeah. So then he told me that other people were dead, that other people were moved to a terrorist camp hospital, which was close to a military base, and they were being treated there. He told me ISI was going around giving money to the family of the deceased because to keep them quiet. That they were already clearing all the camp and rebuilding more or less with the same debris. So it would look old. All this took 45 days. Those 45 days they took to bring people.
Yes, that's right. You said the correspondents and stringers were brought in, I think,
Yeah, to bring people
42
there.
days after.
They took there a delegation of diplomats and a selection of journalists. They took them there after 45 days to show them that it was a madrasa indeed, that nobody was hit or hurt, that there was no sign of bombings. And of course, they took them there with the army. They were allowed, I think, 20 minutes. And that was the cherry on top of all the whitewashing. Of course, nobody was allowed to do. They said the buildings don't look new. Paradoxically, the only one who had some doubts and raised some questions, which was not, of course, not addressed, but written down, the only one was the Al Jazeera correspondent. Maybe because...
Surprise.
Yeah. Which was saying, yeah, they look like this, but yes, they allowed us only a short questions to the children and so on. Now, the hall they showed where the children were studying, this person had sent me pictures of that same hall taken a few months before, and it was full of Jaish-e-Mohammed banners. It was full of other stuff. I mean, obviously, it had been whitewashed. Even the banners outside the place were changed. I have the old ones. But strangely enough, nobody even bothered to find out or to ask, because it was amazing. And then the question, is a madrasa for children? 1 hour and a half walking on the top of a hill, far away from any village. Why would you set a school for children there?
No, it doesn't make any sense logically.
No, it doesn't. But this was the narrative. This has been taken face value. Not only this, lots of analysis have been commissioned to show that there was no damage to the buildings, no damage to the camp, and that was a miss, and there was nothing there.
And then you had this interview with the Air Chief Marshal at the time, Birinder Singh Dhanoa.
Yeah.
You already brought up the spice bombs.
Yes.
That he explained how those work. But then, of course,
he said, I don't wanted to bring down buildings. I wanted to kill jihadists. I wanted to, I mean, my goal was to send a message to Jahish and to kill as many terrorists I could, not to break down buildings. And then he said, those bombs, if a bomb hits a normal bomb, it's a building, everything will collapse.
Right.
But there are chances of survival, because if you are under a table or wherever, there's some protection. You'll be safe. Those bombs hit the top of the building and they go down. They just left, they leave a hole, then they explode in the cavity. So the building will stay. There are clips online of the same bombs being used in other places.
Yeah, so you did actually mention that even the U.S., for example, has used such weapons. I think Syria maybe, and
in Syria,
in other places. And the other aspect of the interview was what kind of information the IF can release at what time, and the strategic considerations behind that. Yet, it seems like the Western media at times would demand evidence from India in such a situation. But as you pointed, or as it came up in the interview, should the U.S. do a similar strike somewhere else, such evidence is not demanded. I think even with the Abbottabad raid, there still isn't.
Nobody asked evidences.
So how would you explain? I guess this. This. It's a double standard, I guess.
Nobody asked evidences when they claimed that they killed Zawahiri in the middle of a residential area in Kabul, killing a number of other people together. I mean, nobody demanded evidences. Not only that, when Taliban said actually Zawahiri wasn't there, of course, nobody bothered to even to report that, because Taliban are a terrorist group, and nobody is going to believe them face value. What always amazes me is like Pakistan. Pakistan word is always taken face value. Being a well-known sponsor of terrorists, being what they said the most dangerous country in the world, but yet whatever Islamabad says is taken face value, and the proof is on the other side.
Right, and that is actually something we even saw this time around in 2025. We saw similar treatment by certain sections of the press. So when it comes to the war of narratives, if you had to look at 2019 and 2025, and there were perhaps some changes in how the Indians presented the information they have and when they put it out. Yet, according to many, it would seem like what we're gaining tactically, at least when it comes to the war of narratives, we're not being able to get our act together. What do you think about at least this side of things?
Two things. First of all, India is a democracy and it has an opposition. The press is free, and there's a strong section of the press very critical towards the government. It's always been.
Right.
Pakistan is not a democracy. Journalists cannot say anything which is not fitting their narrative, otherwise they die or disappear. And this is one of the reasons. Pakistani press is all together and all is a block.
Right.
The narrative is that, as nobody will say something different. With India, you cannot control the narrative, like you cannot control the narrative in any other democracy. There are voices out of the box now. Whether they are right, wrong, they have an agenda, they do it just for, does not matter. They will not and cannot be silenced. So this is one of the main reasons, because then the Pakistani narrative passes.
Because they're not contradicting each other. So you just have
No.
the same, I guess, point
Yes.
going.
Then at the age of social media, you will have some voice from the ground saying something different. Or if you know people, I mean, I remember when they said, no, nothing hit Lahore. I had a friend who lives not so far from the military installations, and he told me, well, actually, a bomb fell near my house. So
You're right. Yeah. There were videos from Pakistan on social media, because you did have common people sort of filming.
No, but in this case, the 2025 case was slightly different because they could not deny it.
Yes, that's true.
They could not deny it. I mean, it was undeniable, and I think the reaction has been carefully crafted to be undeniable. In this case, the narrative was different. They started saying, yes, they bombed, they killed civilians. They killed civilians, they did not hit. I mean, again, there are no terrorist camps in Pakistan. All those hit were summer camps for for kids of the terrorists, maybe. Bahawalpur is not a terrorist camp, is not a terrorist installation. Again, is a mosque where, strangely enough, middle of the night, the mosque was full of people, only women and children. And again, taken at face value. Nobody said, sorry, but middle of the night?
That doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, there were women and children. Really? They cannot even go inside during the day. So, but some way, nobody is questioning these things. Some way, when the funeral happened and Masood Azhar was leading the prayer for the members of his family, nobody found it strange. And Masood Azhar is an international terrorist. when in other places funerals were led again by notorious terrorists, plus members of the army and ISI, nobody found it strange. The narrative that, yeah, no, there are no terrorist camps. Bahawalpur is, in the past weeks, advertisements are going all around of, there's a call for a new wing, Jaish-e-Mohammed wing, a female wing, which will be led, but I mean, it's not a secret. They do it openly.
Right.
On social media and on local press. A female wing, Jaish-e-Mohammed female wing, which will be trained by Masood Azhar's sisters, which are members of the Jaish too. Like all the family. And will be trained most probably to be spies and suicide bomber. And when Masood Azhar has been launching this thing, for some reason, he is quite upset. It is a kind of reply to the female soldiers into the Indian army, and God only knows why, to female journalists. He's quite upset with us. So, but this thing is done openly.
Yeah, none of this is a secret. You said it's on
Yes.
social media, which you've written in the book they make very deft use of.
But still, we have Donald Trump saying, oh, Pakistan did so much to fight terrorism. Of course, Donald Trump being Donald Trump.
An interesting point that actually comes up in the book, and you cite, I think, Aisha Siddiqa about this, and then follow up with your own interactions with a former ISI chief, Hamid Gul. And you bring out the point that there's often a lot of focus on Pakistan's relationship with jihadist proxies being very strategic in nature, but it's not just tactical alone. That it is also based on common values.
Yes.
Could you expound on this a little further?
Okay. The pages I quote from Aisha Siddiqa, I mean, I think very few people know the topic better of Aisha Siddiqa, even though she is from Bahawalpur.
Right.
So, yes. There are, yes, the links are closer than one imagine. For ideological reason, for religious reasons, Hamid Gul, who was one of the most entertaining fellows I've ever met, was trying to convince me. He said, I'm going to write an essay on the similarity of principles between French Revolution and Islam.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So, leave it alone. I mean, it was, but he had a theory, fine. But if you remember, Hamid Gul was the one at a certain point who groomed Imran Khan.
Correct.
Who shifted from an image of westernized international playboy and cricket champion to a radical Islamist, pious and devoted man. He was sitting with Hamid Gul on stage. Hamid Gul and members of Jaish and Lashkar-e-Toiba and integralist parties all the time. And that was part of a strategy elaborated long before the time of the coups was over. It was unpopular. It would gain sanctions from the West and mainly from Americans who are formally protecting any democracy. Then they don't care. Till it is formal and there are formal elections is fine. So the way to take power was a different one, installing civilian governments totally subservient to the army. This is what he did. This is what's happening now.
Right.
Asim Munir has been endorsed as chief of the country by Donald Trump. He went up and down from US in the past months, holding meetings with Trump without any civilian representative of the government. Only the last time he took the poor Shahbaz Sharif there, who was sounding, okay, where I am, what am I doing?
Correct. There's no pretense of, I guess, civilian.
No, not anymore.
Yeah, I mean, there is a civilian government, but the field marshal is everywhere. Yes.
See the last election, the past elections. I mean, elections in Pakistan have never really been free,
Of course.
but this once was a scandal. They were openly rigged. Openly, totally rigged. I mean, in Lahore, from where Shahbaz was elected, there were more votes than voters. And Pakistan was full of international observers. I don't know what, maybe partying, because it's fine. Regularly. It's, again, no objection till formally there's a government is fine for Americans and for whoever else.
Correct. And coming now to Jaish-e-Mohammed itself, you cover the group in extraordinary detail in the book. There are also some very interesting things you bring up. For instance, when you talk about actually the Pahalgam attack that happened early this year and then kicked off another crisis between India and Pakistan, you bring up now the somewhat overlooked point about Hamas representatives being present in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Of course, there was a speech in Balakot that made news for some time here. And you also bring up the interesting point that India suspects that the Pahalgam attack might have even been informed by Hamas in some way. So could you explain how this sort of, I think it's a very little understood relationship between Jaish-e-Mohammed and Hamas. And I think Hamas's Pakistani links seem to be missing from most narratives about, Israel's conflict with Hamas. So the more we could learn about that, I think that would be great.
See, when I've seen the first reports coming out of Pahalgam, I was shocked like everybody else. And I think it is not being highlighted enough.
Yeah.
The shift Pahalgam made into the narrative and into the history also of terrorist attacks in India. For the first time, civilians have been, yes, there have been bomb blasts in markets and so on, but that was different. They target civilians on religious base.
Right.
They have been asked to prove their religion, and they have been shot. They killed only men, not women, telling the women, you go report to your prime minister. The further step was the release from the terrorist group, from the resistance front, was using a language totally unlike any other release of previous terrorist groups, previously by terrorist groups, and totally unlike any other statement by local terrorist group. It was specifically saying there are no civilians because all those people are settlers and colonizers. The same narrative, exactly the same
So the
language,
vocabulary is almost borrowed from Hamas and other.
has been used to justify the 7th of October massacre. Again, even there, civilians.
Correct.
But they are not civilians because they are settlers, which is a twisted way to but still. So I was struck by the similarities, but then I remembered days before the Pahalgam attack, there had been reports that in Bahawalpur, where there are no terrorist camps, there had been a big gathering between members of Jahish, other assorted terrorists, assorted members of ISI, and 4 Hamas top fellows, which has been gifted horses and swords in this. Months before, same Hamas members had been seen in POK sharing stage again with local politicians, ISI, army people, and of course pushing all the narrative of liberating Kashmir, the colonizers, the oppressors, the invaders. Of course, they don't realize that if there's an invaders, it's Pakistan, but fine. This is what happened. Of course, the links between, informal links between Pakistani terrorist groups and Hamas are there, have always been there. Liberating Palestine has always been one of the main requests. Also, both Jaish, Lashkar-e-Toiba support for Palestinian brothers, and of course, both Jaish and Lashkar-e-Toiba are creatures of ISI, so do some math. The interesting is they've been shouting and screaming and condemning and campaigning for free Palestine and for the horrors and human rights violation committed by Israel, but nobody raised a word for what's happening in their own country, in Balochistan.
Correct. So there is indeed a hypocrisy there. Another relationship you get into when it comes to Jaish-e-Mohammed is JEM and the Taliban.
Yeah.
Now, when the Taliban came back into power, it was seen as a big strategic victory for Pakistan. I think most Indians at that time were seeing it with lamentation. However, now the script seems to have flipped a bit. The Taliban and the Pakistanis seem to be at loggerheads. India's relationship with the Taliban seems to be evolving to quote unquote better place. Do you think this can translate into some kind of collaboration with us and the Taliban, particularly when it comes to groups like the Jaish, which at one time perhaps still do, would have found safe haven there, been active in those regions? What do you think?
I don't think so. Okay. When the Taliban broke the shackles of slavery, as Imran Khan said, the government was formed with a blessing and a physical presence in Kabul of the then ISI chief. So, who installed in key places members of the Haqqanis?
Correct.
Yeah, the one close to Pakistani ISI.
Right.
Taliban are not a unique body. There are two factions. Till now, they live together more or less happily, but there are tensions in between.
The factions. Yeah.
The Kandahar faction led by Akhundzada will not and was never depending by Pakistan. Don't forget also Haqqani are Pakistani. It's
Right.
yeah, but this is something many people forget
Yeah, that's true. You forget that they're from.
Haqqania.
Yeah.
So yes, there are two different levels. Terrorist camps. They've always been there. Jaish has been up and down, kept more or less at bay in that moment by ISI. Camps, especially in Nangarhar, have been franchised to Jaish.
Right.
There are other terrorist camps all around Afghanistan since they took power again are flourishing. Any kind of group has its own space, starting from Al-Qaeda, which, again, don't forget, has very close family links with the Haqqani. So that is there. That will not change. That will not change because also the links are family and personal and ideological.
And not just a product of the ISI's historical involvement, is what you're saying.
They are, but they are not only that. And then again, we have seen in the past year, again, even ISI and the army are not a monolith.
Yes, of course, there's internal conflict there as well.
There are factions and there are things. So, and then, as Hamid Gul told me once, it's never a good idea to go against old friends. He was talking of Americans, but it is, there are links. They are there. Terrorists are their biggest asset. You say if Taliban, I don't think Taliban are showing they need recognition, they need endorsement, they need money. So they are trying to, balance the things. They talk to everybody, more or less, including India. And India has been very, very clever in instaurating talks and links based on humanitarian aid, commerce, and other stuff. Of course, if you go deeper that way, then you have addressed another set of issues which you cannot skip: human rights, women's condition, terrorism.
Correct. So you're saying there are inherent limits to such cooperation that are structural.
Yeah, I don't think they will shut down their terrorist camps, whatever India promised them or whatever India says. Because also the relationship within them are what they are. The relationship with Pakistan, however soured, are far more complex than we think. Talibans are revolting against Pakistan, yes and no. Nobody cares for few people killed, sorry. And I don't believe also into all the TTP thing, because again, if you are observing this thing since enough years,
Right.
TTP is not an Afghan group. TTP is a Pakistani group. TTP was formed in Pakistan by the same guys who in that moment needed to hit another segment of the state or deep state. TTP during the years has been used to do some dirty jobs on their behalf. Good Taliban, bad Taliban, you remember
The bifurcation.
So, yes. Their members have been beloved guests of ISI at time, then ran away, then TTP, if you look close to the pattern, TTP increases his attacks each time Pakistan is begging for money or for endorsement from mainly from US for international institutions, because the narrative, it is unchanged for the past almost 30 years. We are the first victim of terrorism. We paid a terrible price for joining the NATO alliance. We need help. We need money. We need weapons. We need everything. Oh, now even Shabbat Sharif recently, days ago, said, no, they don't want loan, because then loan need to be repaid, and and they cannot. They want aid on based on humanitarian basis. So free money.
Yes. Now, to conclude, some would argue that at least from Balakot onwards through the 2025 crisis, we've seen a doctrinal shift on India's part. And it seems that the message communicated to Pakistan is that we will now no longer distinguish between your proxies and your conventional responses. Anything done by your proxies will be met with a conventional response, in the sense that plausible deniability is no longer going to be accepted, and the nuclear bogey is going to be called. Looking at the behavior of the Pakistani state, I guess you could say the military establishment, do you think this is something that will hold in terms of deterrence, or do you think are we still yet to see a lot more play out as far as their proxy groups are concerned?
See, there's been a shift, and of course, the shift has been, but India has been bombing terrorist camps.
Right.
Yes, then, yes, at the end, also some military base, but after years and years and years of being convinced not to react.
Yeah.
But at the point, you have to shift your attitude. If it does not work, and it did not work because terrorist attack went on happening because the thought was always they will be stopped by the international community for fear of the nuclear war. Now, no state in the world is as responsible as Pakistan in boasting every 3 seconds, we are a nuclear power. Asim Munir said it in Florida.
Yeah, they will take down
Nuclear power.
half the world with
we
us.
go down, all the world go down. I mean, really. I haven't heard Putin saying I'm going to use nuclear again if you don't stop. It's just crazy, and nobody has been fearing a nuclear war when it comes to to Ukraine. So why should somebody be afraid of that any time there's a skirmish between Pakistan and India? No, it needs to be stopped because of the nuclear. The deterrence is there for how much it can be called deterrence. I mean, I don't think they will refrain from doing, from starting any other terrorist action, and they will refrain only from using nuclear because, by the way, they are not stupid enough not to understand that if they drop a nuclear bomb, they are next door.
Of course.
So nobody is so stupid. Oh, well, maybe Mohammed Hafiz Said, because he told me once he could not rule out the option of a nuclear war if India went on building dams and depriving Punjab of water. So we are confident Mohammed Hafiz Said does not have the nuclear button, but still. And this is also the blackmail, the main blackmail. I remember having conversations with American generals, top guns, and so on, and well, angrily telling me, what do you want us to do? Because I was finding, frankly, incomprehensible the strategy they used during the so-called war on terror, especially when they were bombing Balochistan, telling them, no, we are chasing terrorists. Really, they bombed everything except where the terrorists were. So, what do you want us to do? Bombing Pakistan is a nuclear country. Okay. There are other ways, but anyway, this is the big blackmail.
Francesca, that was most insightful. Thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much.